I will start with the session. Okay. Nitish, can you please go on mute? Okay. Okay. So guys, welcome to Surat MuleSoft Meetup 52, and topic for today is a Flex Gateway. So we will going to see a scenario with like port-based routing and other scenario with a path-based routing. And for today's session, I will going to use the mini version of the Kubernetes that is known as a mini cube. So we will going to do the cube, right? So it's just a kind of mini cube or mini version of Kubernetes that you can set up on your own laptop. Like you don't require much higher configuration or anything. You can do it. You can do it at your own. Basically, just a few steps are there. You can get it online and you can quickly set up. Okay, let me start with safe harbor statement. Both the speaker and host are organizing this meetup in the individual capacity only. We are not representing our companies or organization here. The presentation is strictly for learning purpose, and like we are not holding any responsibility whether this solution will work for your business requirement. You may have to do some changes here and there, like the maybe some architecture changes or maybe some like like implementation changes. Yeah, so here we will just going to present some kind of like how what is Flex Gateway, how you can do the setup. Then presentation is not meant for any promotional activities, and here we are not for doing any promotion, right? Here we are just for doing the knowledge sharing basically. Okay, and we will generally upload the recording on the event page within 24 hours, so you can just access the recording from the event page after 24 hours. You can submit or you can ask question at any time. Try to make the session as interactive as possible, and we always love to hear questions from you basically. And at the end we always look for the feedback from you. This help us to improve for the future meetup, for selecting the future topic, for selecting the future speakers. Thank you so much. Okay. So I will just skip the introduction. We have done the introduction for many times. So just organizer, myself, Jitendra, and other organizer is Nitish Jain, who is the application developer in the Accenture. Nitish, you want to say something or just I can skip it?
No, we can skip it, Jackie.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I will just skip my introduction. I have done a lot of time, so I will just skip it. So let me start with agenda. We'll talk about what is a universal API management and how to set up a Flex gateway on the Kubernetes. Then like how to enable a port-based routing and how to enable a path-based routing. What are the limitations with port-based routing and what are the limitations with the path-based routing? And like yeah, we will see some practical scenarios basically. So let me start with a universal API management. So as everyone is aware, like recently or like 6 months back, MuleSoft has introduced the concept known as a universal API management, right? So what does this mean? Like why what is that universal API management? The main intention behind the universal API management is that like you can manage, you can govern, you can engage, and you can secure the APIs. Like doesn't matter whether it's a MuleSoft API or whether it's a non-MuleSoft API. So you can govern, secure, and engage and manage the MuleSoft as well as non-MuleSoft API under the single umbrella, like under a single platform. So you can see all your APIs, like you can govern, you can enable your API management capabilities, like API management capabilities on the MuleSoft as well as APIs, right? So you can see all your APIs under a single platform, that is Anypoint platform, right? Under the single umbrella, or you can call it as under the single pane of glass. So where you can just, you can see the monitoring for those API, you can apply the policies, you can apply the security, like you can enable any kind of alerts, and you can like implement the API governance for your API. Doesn't matter whether it's a MuleSoft API or it's a non-MuleSoft API, right? So earlier, what we are doing to enable the API management capability for non-MuleSoft API. So we are creating the API proxy, right? So generally, we create the API proxy, and like that API proxy, receive the request and sending to the non-MuleSoft API, right? So we have to create some kind of API proxy for enabling the API management capability for the non-MuleSoft API. With Flex Gateway, you don't require any kind of proxy, which means like you will not require the Mule runtime, and you don't have to, you don't require extra cores or extra vCores for deploying your Flex Gateway or for deploying your extra, for publishing your API to the Flex Gateway. Basically, it doesn't require any kind of extra cores or something like that. When you are creating the proxy, you may have to deploy your solution to your to the cloud hub, where you have to allocate some kind of recourse, and even you can deploy your application to proxy to runtime fabric manager RTF, and also you can deploy a proxy to the on-premise basically. But with Flex Gateway, you don't require a mule runtime for running the Flex Gateway. You don't require mule runtime basically. Okay, so let so that is what a universal API management basically. So it allow the organization to or enterprise to control, manage, and secure the API under the single pane of glass. It can adapt any kind of architecture. It doesn't matter whether your MuleSoft API or non-MuleSoft API written in which technology. It's a technology agnostic. It doesn't matter what kind of architecture is following. It can be monolithic. It can be microservices. It can be any kind of architecture, so you can definitely enable universal API management capability for those, and like you can govern all your API under a single platform. What does this mean? You don't require a multiple API management tool. For managing the MuleSoft, you may require MuleSoft API gateway. For managing Spring Boot API, you may require some third-party gateway. For managing you may be using some any third party API management tool, right? So here with Flex Gateway, you can manage all kind of API. Doesn't matter in which technology they are written, what kind of architecture they are following, and what kind of traffic is coming on your API, right? It doesn't matter. So you can simply enable the Flex Gateway for any kind of API basically. That is what a universal API management is. Okay, so with universal API management, like MuleSoft has improved some of the product, and they have introduced some of the new product. So here is the list of the product which has been improved or which has been launched, right? So here we will mostly discuss about Flex Gateway. So Flex Gateway is one of the a product that has been launched with a universal API management. Okay, so what is a Flex Gateway? Generally, Flex Gateway is the Envoy base. So generally, it has been considered Envoy is one of the fastest service. So Flex Gateway, it's a completely Envoy based. It's ultra fast, and generally it's a high performance, and it's a flexible. As why the name is Flex Gateway, because it's a flexible. When I say flexible, what does this mean? It's a technology agnostic. It can adapt any kind of architecture. It doesn't matter what kind of transaction load is coming on your API and where is your API located. It doesn't matter. Your API can be located on the cloud. It can be located on premises. It can be located like anywhere on the runtime fabric, or it can be located on your bare metal server or on your virtual machine. It doesn't matter. So that's why the Flex, like it is known as a Flex Gateway. So you can secure and manage API located anywhere. You can extend your anypoint platform capabilities to MuleSoft as well as non-MuleSoft APIs. It can achieve, like you can achieve the consistent security and governance across every API operating the any environment. So you can easily implement API governance, API policies, API security, anything using this Flex Gateway. You can like easily integrate your Flex Gateway with CI/CD pipelines also. Generally, Flex Gateway can be created in two mode. One is local mode and other is the connected mode. So what does this mean? So when you are setting up the Flex Gateway in connected mode, it means your Flex Gateway will get registered in your anypoint platform. So like let's consider you are setting up your Flex Gateway on the Docker, right? So Docker might be running in your like local environment, maybe on AWS, maybe on cloud. But even like your Flex Gateway get deployed on your Docker, which is located on like any cloud or on premises, but still your Flex Gateway will get registered in Anypoint platform, so you can control your Flex Gateway from the Anypoint platform, right? You can like publish your API from the Anypoint platform to the Flex Gateway. You can apply the policies, like everything, you can do it from the Anypoint platform. Only the thing is that like when you are setting up the Flex Gateway in the connected mode, the metadata will be sent to the Anypoint platform, like monitoring metadata, matrices. There are many other metadata, right? It will only send the metadata, but it will not going to send any kind of data to your control plane, basically. Any question?
Yes, Jitendra, if may I.
Yeah.
The Flex Gateway, it's built on Envoy, right? And we can deploy proxies
Yes.
for non-mule APIs, correct?
No, see, you don't. So basically, if I'm not wrong, you mean to say like you have a Flex Gateway. Can we deploy the proxy on Flex Gateway, right?
Correct.
You can, it's not deploy, like you can publish, so you can publish like you when you are setting up the Flex Gateway, right? There's a
Correct.
one thing. the first thing you need to set up the Flex Gateway, right?
Right.
So like you can treat the proxy as an application, one kind of application, right? So
Yeah.
when you want to publish any API, so you have to give the implementation URI of your proxy. You can tell your Flex Gateway, this is the implementation URI. So for Flex Gateway, it doesn't matter whether it's a proxy or whether it's a API, right? For Flex Gateway, it's matter implementation URI. Where is your implementation located? So when you are setting up the
Mm-hmm.
proxy also, it will give
Mm-hmm.
some kind of URL, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So
Mm-hmm.
when you are publishing your proxy to the Flex Gateway, you have to provide that proxy as an implementation URL when you are publishing to the Flex Gateway.
So suppose if I have like 100 Python APIs,
Mhm.
so I would have to have the implementation URL for all those 100 APIs and then register them with the Flex Gateway.
Let's consider. Yeah, this is a very good question, Sudhir.
Yeah.
Let me tell you,
Thank you.
let now I will tell you one example. Let consider like you have 100 of APIs, right? So the case in this case, like your 100 of APIs might be exist on single server, maybe on the single server, maybe on like single server, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe consider like XYZ server,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It is located. Now, when I say implementation URI, you don't have to provide the resource path, right? You can simply provide a domain path like http, like
Mm-hmm.
www.api.com, basically, right? Slash. So you require that path. But whenever you will send the request to the Flex Gateway, right? So you will send the request to the Flex Gateway, like your Flex Gateway URL is flexgateway.api.com, right? So you will say http flexgateway.api.com, where you will give a resource path also, like API slash invoices,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
what Flex Gateway will do, Flex Gateway will authenticate and it will check for all the policy. Then it will change the URL. So it will pick the URL from the implementation URL, which is api.example.com, right? It will change that and it will add the resource path, right?
Okay. Okay. So the typically in the DLB we used to do that, right? We don't have to give the resource for routing. So here it's predominantly be restricted to the DNS of the Flex
It's
Gateway.
depend like even if you want to restrict per API, you can do that. In that case,
Okay.
you have to give a full path, right?
Okay. Okay.
So it depends. Like let's consider like you may like I will talk about port based routing and path
Sure.
based routing, right?
Sure.
So where like you may have requirement. I want to publish 10 API on one port, 10
Mm-hmm.
API on other port, 10
Mm-hmm.
API on other, like you may have a different business group, right? And
Yeah.
each business group you want to publish the API on different ports, basically, right? In
Perfect.
such cases, like you can add some additional, like domain for all the APIs are same, but you
Perfect.
can add some kind of additional path also, right? So where like it will take care, like no, I will going to explain in demo, you
Yeah.
will get to come to know, right?
Sure. Sure. Thank you so much, Jitendra.
So, like generally, a Flex Gateway can be installed on Kubernetes, Docker Container, Linux. But recently, MuleSoft added more support where you can set up a Flex Gateway on OpenShift, and like it also starts supporting a lot of Linux operating system. Initially, it was supporting like CentOS and Debian Linux operating system. Now it starts supporting RHEL. It starts supporting AWS Linux operating system. Like it start giving more and more options, basically. Authentication mechanism, when you are setting up a Flex Gateway, so you can use either of one authentication mechanism. It can be any point username, the password, or token, and connected app. So these are the three authentication mechanism can be set up when you are like can be used when you are setting up a Flex Gateway. Then this is just a simple like thing, a simple diagram where like you can set up a Flex Gateway in connected mode. Once you are setting up the Flex Gateway in the connected mode, you can completely control your Flex Gateway from the Wave UI. So any point platform Wave UI, basically. When you are setting up in the local mode, you have to control your Flex Gateway with the local YAML descriptor file. So even you want to add a policy, right? You need to add that particular syntax in your YAML descriptor file. But the problem here is like the indentation should be proper. You should know the proper attributes name, like those kind of things. Like it's very complex when you're setting up the Flex Gateway in the local mode. Like you have to keep on updating the local YAML descriptor file. Basically, I will going to show you if I have any file. Let me show that.
Sorry, Jitendra, one quick question.
Yeah.
If it is in the local mode,
Mhm.
is the policy injection happens during the runtime or when the application is booted?
I will tell you, it's not like that. So let's consider like you have deployed you have published your API, right? And you haven't applied any policy, and later you want to apply the policy to that particular API, right? you will simply add this particular syntax into your YAML descriptor file, right? So generally, like, so it will not going to restart anything, like, it will not going to restart anything basically. So basically you can inject that policy after, deploying your API also.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and these are the some parameters. So like, when you talk about the control plane, so connected mode, as I mentioned, it will be controlled by any point platform. Like for local mode, as I mentioned, you have to use YAML descriptor file, which I've just shown you. Then logging, for logging you can use the any point platform advanced logging. For advanced logging you may require the Titanium license, and for local mode, like, you may have to integrate it Splunk or ELA. API monitoring, you can use all the API metrics, everything. But with the local mode, you have to integrate with Grafana, Prometheus, or any third-party tool. Flex gateway management, as I mentioned, it will done by the anypoint platform. Here in local mode, it will be done by files. API policies, like, you can, like, all the custom policy as well as the out of box policies to the Flex gateway. There are few, 2 or 3 policies like logging policies. These are not supported by Flex gateway yet. So you can check on the MuleSoft documentation. There are 2 3 policy, I don't remember the name, that is not supported basically by the Flex gateway. And for local YAML, for local mode, you have to, keep on updating YAML descriptor file. Let me show you once again. Yeah, this is my YAML descriptor file, and I want to apply the policy. I should know all this attribute name, username, password, all these things. So it's a bit a tedious task basically. Currently it's a basic authentication policy. If I want to apply the JWT validation policy, it have a more and more attributes, these names, and like, attribute name and value, it should be proper basically. Okay, and like, now I am coming to what different, how the Flex gateway can be used. So basically, like, you can use the single Flex gateway for the multiple APIs, and those multiple APIs can be written in any languages, any technology. It can be Mule API, it can be Spring Boot API, Node.js API, or .NET API, but you can use the single Flex gateway to control all your APIs basically, right? So here you can use, you add the multiple uh, implementation URI basically, right? So to one Flex gateway, you can publish the multiple implementation URI. That is possible, like, so I don't know there's any limit on that, but you can, like, generally you can publish as many as API you want basically to the single Flex gateway. And the second, if you are following up the microservices architecture or micro gateway architecture, in such cases, like, you can have a single Flex gateway for one technology, or even you can have a single Flex gateway for the single API. That is also possible. But like, if you are setting up the single Flex gateway for the single API, it will be the costly operations basically, right? So, but in this case, what I've done, like, in this case, like, you can set up a Flex gateway according to the technology. For Mule API, you can have a one Flex gateway. For Spring Boot, you can have a one Flex gateway. For Node.js, you can have a one Flex gateway. For .NET API, you can have a one Flex gateway. And the other example can be business group. If you have a multiple business group in your organization, you can have a, like, different Flex gateway for each business group. Or maybe you can use the combination of technology and the business group, and also you can use the combination of the business group and, your tree layer architecture. For system API, you may have a separate Flex gateway. For process API, you may have a separate Flex gateway. For experience API, you may have a separate Flex gateway, because, like, you may require different security or like or compliance requirement for each and every layer basically, right? For generally, like, for experience API, you may apply different policy. For process API, you may hide the implementation also, you don't have to expose it publicly, or you may have to apply different kind of policies. Or for system API, you may have to apply the different kind of policies. So there are various architecture you can follow. It depends on the organization need and the requirement. Okay, I will talk about few Flex gateway options. We can set up a Flex gateway in the connected mode basically. So where, like, you can, or like, for high availability purpose, you can deploy a multiple replicas of your Flex gateway basically, right? So, like, for one Flex gateway, you can have a more than one replicas. So which means it will provide, it will provide high availability. It will be providing the scalability and, like, fault tolerance kind of architecture. If one of the replica goes down, the other replicas will try to, accept the request, and till the damage, or, like, the replica which has been broken, it will try to recover automatically, like, so it will try to recover automatically. And here you can use all the out of box capability which is provided by MuleSoft. You can use runtime manager, you can use the API manager for applying the policies, for API metrics, you can use the out of box anypoint monitoring. This kind of things you can easily use with a Flex Gateway in the connected mode. In local mode, like as I mentioned, everything has been managed by YAML descriptor file, correct? And you have to use all third party logging tool, third party monitoring tool, and even for local mode you can set up the multiple replicas or multiple instance of your Flex Gateway, which means it will provide high availability, scalability, and the fault tolerance or high performance kind of architecture. Okay, and it also support features like auto scaling. Basically you can enable the auto scaling, so I will going to showcase one demonstration on auto scaling, how to set up the multiple replica counts. Everything I will take care of in this particular demonstration. So here also you can set up the Flex Gateway in the hybrid mode. So maybe like you may have a requirement like your system API metadata should not goes out of the environment, right? Even metadata, right? So there might be compliance requirement where you don't want you to send your metadata even outside your network or outside your infrastructure or corporate data center, right? In such cases you can set up the Flex Gateway in the local mode, which will ensure that your metadata is also not flowing outside your firewall, basically, right? So in this, like you may have set up a Flex Gateway in the connected mode as well as in the local mode. Your system API and the process API might be running in the Flex Gateway in the local mode, whereas the experience API might be running in the local, Flex Gateway as a connected mode, basically. So there are various options available. It depends, this is just a hypothetical architecture. Maybe it can change according to your requirement. Even like you can set up everything in the connected mode also. It depends on your organization policy needs. What is your organization compliance policy rules and regulations. So here I will not going to explain much thing. Like I've already explained, for local mode you require all third party tool and YAML descriptor file, whereas for connected mode you can use all out of box capabilities. Now here we will going to see. So the first I will go with the port based routing. So where what happens, every time you are publishing new API, right, to the Flex Gateway, you have to open the port, basically. Let's consider I am deploying my employee API which is running on the port 9000 on the Docker, right? And I want to enable the API management capability for that. I already have a Flex Gateway running. Now I want to publish that employee API to the Flex Gateway. I want to ensure that I create the listener for this particular thing on 8081. Now, and it is just an example port. You can use any port. Now, I was in future. I want to publish the other API, that is the order API, basically, which is running on 9002 in the Docker container. And now, how Flex, if I deploy this order API on 8081, right? It first of all, it will not allow to deploy it. It will say the port is already used by the other API, basically. Now what in this case I have to create another port which is 8082. I will tell you like how tedious task is to create this port, basically. I will going to showcase in the demonstration. In future the third port came, a third API came, I have to open the another port which is 8083. Why we want to open the port? Because the first thing, you cannot deploy the multiple APIs on the same port, right? And secondly, how Flex Gateway will come to know, where to route the request. If I deploy all the APIs on a single port, even it allow, and I deploy everything on the single port, how Flex Gateway will come to know where I want to route the request, right? So right now depending on the port, it can route the request, right? If the request coming on 8082, it will route to order API, 8083 it will route to health API. So there are various things, basically, right? Now this routing, you can publish everything 8081, but here, so like if request coming, if in request my base path is employee API, so it will route the request to the employee API. If in request path my resource path is in request my resource path is having order API, or base path is the order API, the request will go to the order API, basically. So here you can deploy everything on the 8081. And I feel like this is the better approach. Like I don't have to open the multiple port. If I'm deploying the 1000 API on my Flex Gateway, I don't have to open the 1000 ports, basically, right? I may open few ports, like maybe 10 or 10 ports. On each port I can deploy 100 API, basically. So right, so only the thing is that the path must be unique for all the APIs, basically, right? If you're deploying the fourth API, you cannot give a same base path. You may have you may require the different base path. It must be unique on that particular Flex Gateway. Any question? before I move into demonstration, I
Uh,
try
so,
to,
sorry,
yeah,
Jitendra, I have one question with the path-based routing.
yeah.
So if I have a varied the throughputs on these APIs, how would the Flex Gateway would handle that? Suppose if my throughput for orders is like 100 TPS, and then the health and employee is lesser. So do you think it can handle the load on a single port based on the path-based routing?
Definitely it will. See, like port, it doesn't, like it doesn't matter how much API you are published on the port number, right? So that will not matter. The What will matter, like what kind of memory you have allocated to your
Mm-hmm.
Flex Gateway, right? How many v cores basically. Generally, see, like definitely, as initially I mentioned, like for Flex Gateway we don't have to allocate any kind of code. We don't want any kind of v cores, but still you will
Correct.
deploying your Flex Gateway on some right? Maybe on the
Correct.
Docker, but
Yeah.
then it will definitely utilize some kind of CPU and some kind of memory from your Docker or maybe
Mm-hmm.
from your server, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
as per me, like what I heard, like what
Mm-hmm.
if you are allocating zero point 0.4 V cores, right? zero point
Mm-hmm.
0.4 cores, I will not say V cores, zero point 0.4 CPU basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
It will
Mm-hmm.
process around 1250 requests, 1250 requests
Okay.
basically,
Okay.
right? So that is what given on some documentation. So I
Mm-hmm.
think like 1000 to like 1200 requests can be processed per second if you have allocated zero point 0.4 or something, like some kind of course basically.
Okay. So probably a vertical scaled the under the hood
Yeah,
Docker would be beneficial for this kind of
yeah.
deployment.
So why I'm saying we can use the group the like API depending on the port. Let consider if my one of the port goes down 8081, right? There might be possibility the listener may goes down for 8081, right? But it means your other API is still running on 8082, 8083 are there basically, right? So
Yeah.
or other thing, like you may have a different business group and everybody is using the same API, right? So now what you want to do some kind of segregation between them, right? So you can deploy those API on different port. Like for business group 1 you can use 8081, for business group 2 you can use 8082. So when you are setting up the application load balancer on the top of your Flex Gateway or NGINX load balancer on the top of your Flex Gateway, where you can define the rule, if the request coming on 8081 it's belong to business group 1, if 8082 it's belong to business group 2, like that, such kind of rules can be also defined.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go with the demonstration part. So what I will going to showcase you. So I have three API. So some of the MuleSoft API and some of the non-MuleSoft API, right? So I have an employee API, I have order API, and I have one of the Node.js API. So let me browse those API and let me showcase you localhost health. So this is my health API. This is non-MuleSoft API. Let me go with the order API. Right, so this is my simple order API. There's a no policy, nothing applied on my particular API. Then I will go with the employee API, which is running on 9000 port. Employee API. This is the employee response. So this particular three API running on the Docker container, right? So this order container and the employee container. In this, like these are the MuleSoft API. Okay, I will going to showcase that also. Let me go to Anypoint platform. Let me go to runtime manager. Let me check the minikube status also. Minikube status. Okay, everything is running. My minikube is running. So here what I've done, like if you go to servers, I have registered this Docker onto my control plane, employee server and order server, right? So these are the two servers I've registered, and this is the container here basically, right? So here I'm using the hybrid kind of implementation, and this order API running on 9002, employee API running on 9000, and Node.js API is running on 9003. Okay, so these are the three different API which are running on a Docker container. Now I want to enable API management capabilities basically for this particular API, right? So what I can do for that, I can set up a Flex gateway, right? So let me open my Notepad++ also. I have some commands written there. I will just close everything. Okay. So for setting up the Flex gateway, you can go to runtime manager. You can select the environment. Here you can just go to Flex gateway. right? Let me go to add gateway. Here you can see Linux, Docker, Kubernetes, OpenShift. For Linux, it supports Ubuntu, Debian, Amazon Linux 2, RHEL, CentOS. These are the operating system supported. For Docker, there is a no operating system. For Kubernetes, again, it's a kind of orchestration service, or OpenShift. It's the same, like okay. So first thing, let here everything is given, like I will just maximize. You have to pull the image. In my case, I already pulled the image, and if you go to this Docker desktop, here you can see the MuleSoft Flex Gateway image already pulled. But let me show you command, how to run this command. I can go to command prompt. I will just maximize this. I will just say enter. It will say that this particular image is already there, so it pulling image is up to date, like no, it's already up to date. In your case, it may take 2-3 minutes to upload, or sorry, to download the image from the from the repository, Docker repository. The second command, you need to register your gateway. Now we are setting up the Flex Gateway in the connected mode. How we will come to know whether we are setting up the Flex Gateway in the connected mode? Let me copy this command. We'll go to Notepad. Sorry. I maximize. Here you can, I will just remove the UID. It's not mandatory. If you want to like uniquely identify your Flex Gateway, you can give this. For now, I will just remove it. Okay. Here you have to give a gateway name. So I will just say Mule Demo Gateway 1. Okay, I'm giving some name. You can follow your own naming conventions and everything. Here the parameter passed, it's a connected true, which means you are setting up the Flex Gateway in the connected mode. If you are not passing this parameter, by default the connected is equals to false, right? If you are not passing, then in that case your Flex Gateway will be set up in the local mode. I'm just bringing everything into the one line because slash doesn't works on the Windows, so that's why I'm bringing everything into one line. Okay, token. Here you can see, like, we can use the three authentication mechanism: username, the password, connected app, and the token. When you are copying the command from your anypoint platform, it generates the token for you. Otherwise, it is again a tedious task for generating the token. So basically, you have to create a connected app, a connected app in the authorization code mode, and then you have to call some of the APIs to generate the token. But here, when you are setting up the Flex Gateway and copying the command from your anypoint platform, it automatically generates the token for you. Okay, I will just remove the slash. Slash works on, like, you don't have to remove the slash if you are setting on the cell prompt, or maybe or Linux command prompt. But here I'm using the Windows command prompt, that's why I'm removing. Okay. The PWD, again, this is the Linux command, which means current path, right? So I don't want to set up anything on the current path. So I created one folder. I want to set up the Flex Gateway there. Not like I have to register the Flex Gateway there. Go to users. Yes, I will give the path here. Copy this path. Go to Notepad. I will just replace this. Okay. Copy this command and just execute. Simple. Enter. It take very less time, it will be done in 20-30 seconds. You should see it generate a file called registration.yaml. Let me open this file. This contain various information, like some kind of ID, like some kind of region where your Flex Gateway has been set up, and some URL. So this is the URL where your where your Flex Gateway will send the metadata, where will but using this particular URLs, Flex Gateway will send the metadata to the anypoint platform. Now, how we get authenticate to the anypoint platform? Here we have a certificates, so this is the certificate generated. This will be used. This will be used for authentication between your Flex Gateway and anypoint platform. So generally, you should not share this file with anyone, right? You just keep with you. This is the registration.yaml file generated. At the end, you will see the registration completed. Just ignore this particular message. Now we have registered. The other thing, if you go to the Flex Gateway, you can see your Flex Gateway registered. You can see it on any point platform. Right now, it's showing 0 replicas, right? Yeah, we haven't written, we have just registered it. We haven't generated any replicas yet, right? So I will go to Add Gateway. I will go to Kubernetes. I will copy this. You require Helm basically. So generally, what is the Helm, right? No, so with Helm, you can like you want to add your Flex gateway to Helm, so you can set up like you can enable the auto scaling. You can make use of various attribute like minimum CPU size, maximum CPU size. Those kind of parameters is available with the Helm, right? So I will copy this Helm command first, and you have to download the Helm utility. In my case, I've already downloaded helm.exe. Just execute this command. Right? It's, in my case, I have already added Flex Gateway to Helm, so it is giving me this kind of thing. In your case, it will give the different message. It has been successfully added to Helm. Now you have to start your Helm. Okay, it's now finally you will say happy helming basically. So we have done this step also. Now we have to create the ingress load balancer. Okay, or we can I can call it we have to create a gateway basically. So now what will happen once we execute this command, right? It will generate a two listener, one on port 40443 and one on port 80 basically, right? So it will generate the two listener. I will going to showcase you how to generate the other listener with port 8081, right? So that I will going to showcase you. So now I'm trying to create some kind of ingress basically. Ingress is nothing, it's kind of load balancer. I'll just copy this command. So here you can see helm minus n gateway. N gateway minus n means namespace. So this is the namespace gateway and like create namespace, wait ingress. So this is the service basically, ingress service. And using this particular image which we have downloaded, a few seconds ago, and like it will going to use this registration.yaml file, right, which we have generated. It's very simple command. You don't have to remember. That's why it's very simple. You can copy it from there. And even good thing, you don't have to change anything, right? And only thing you have to go to the folder where this registration.yaml is available. Okay. Next is just say enter. It takes some time, and sometimes this command never ends, right? So that's why you have to monitor here. Like once the replica is generated, you can just stop this command basically. Generally, sometime like it doesn't automatically get exit basically. Any question?
Jitendra, you haven't specified how to connect to your any point account, right? Where have you provided your
Yeah,
credentials?
everything is this, right? This
But how
file.
would it know that where is my AnyPoint account?
Yeah, this is agent ID, right? It generates some kind of agent ID, and in this particular certificate, right? This certificate is whatever certificate generated here, right? That is
Mhm.
specific to your account. So initially, when I will tell you, like once I registered the, have you seen the register command, right? Let me show you again. So now you can see one replica is generated. I will going to show you, right? No, so here if you see, like I'm providing the
Okay.
organization ID, right?
Okay. Got it.
As I mentioned, right? So like when you're copying the command from here, right, it generate
Mhm.
everything for you, like organization ID. So here I'm specifying the organization ID. So like depending on this organization ID, it will generate the certificates and this
Okay.
agent ID. These are the all things like
And is it specific to a business group or it's
yes.
general?
No, it's specific. See now, whatever organization ID you are seeing here, right? So this
Mm-hmm.
is specific. Here you can provide any business group ID, basically any other
Okay.
also. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
This
you.
is not a parent group or it's not a main business group. You can have a
Okay.
sub business group here also.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So what happened? Like I told you, like this command never get exit, right? So because we put a wait, right? So it keep waiting basically. But if you go to screen on the Flex Gateway, yeah. Here you can see one replica has been generated, right? But I will going to showcase you some more thing which is not clear available anywhere. I've done some kind of RMD and I try to find out. So what I will do now, I want to add more replicas, right? So I want to ensure the high availability, scalability, and all those kind of things. I will remove the create namespace because when you are setting up the Flex Gateway, the namespace created one time. If you try to run this command again with create namespace, right, it will give you a message like the namespace is already available, right? I will simply pass, I will just say create namespace, right? But I will pass this minus n gateway. This is the namespace, right? So now I'm upgrading my Flex Gateway, right? So he should know like which namespace needs to be upgraded. That's why this parameter should be there. But a create namespace should be removed. Right now, let me minimize it. I will just small it, and I will also remove the weight. Otherwise, that command never get exit. And here I will pass set replica count equals to 2. Okay, or equals to 2, or I will say equals to 3, or maybe 4. Let's see. I copy this command. I will just exit this command. Otherwise, it will say now this command is completed. But background, don't worry. In like no, something will happen in background. You will see the changes here. Okay, it got disconnected, and it will try to create a more replicas. Maybe it can create up to 4 replicas. You will going to see all the 4. See, it start creating. Okay, so you can see 4 replicas has been created. It's in connected mode, and you don't want to worry, like sometimes you will keep on seeing like replica keep on disconnecting and connected, right? It automatically try to recover if something goes wrong with the replica, right? So while creating the replica, something goes wrong, right? It will automatically disconnect it. Don't worry if you see n number of replicas. I have seen like 800 replicas, in my Flex gateway, like one of the environment. So don't worry about that, but it will ensure that whatever count you have given, right, it will keep that money or replica in the connected mode. Okay, so now we have seen this. Now I want to see the auto scaling. So what I can see, do auto scaling dot enabled. This is a command equals to true. These are all the Helm chart attributes. Copy. In auto scaling, it will set minimum of 2 replica, and maximum it can go up to the 11 replicas, right? So depending on the memory uses and the CPU uses, default memory uses goes to 50%, or CPU uses goes to 50%. It will keep on adding the additional replicas, right? And like in case when the CPU comes down or memory comes down, it will automatically remove the replicas. Minimum it will keep 2, maximum it can go up to 11. And if you want to set some of your custom CPU uses or memory uses, so there are Helm attributes available. You can do that. And if you want to keep minimum replica of 3 or 4, or maximum of 12 or 13, or maybe, so you can set the such kind of parameters also. Let me execute this command. Now you will see it will just keep a 2 replicas. Okay, it will remove all 4, and it will just keep 2 replicas. So like it's a when you enable the auto scaling, you can see the 2 replicas will be in the connected mode if the CPU uses and the memory uses is below 50%. Yeah, you can see the 2 replicas, right? So any question on this? Okay, I will. Yeah. Any question?
No, Jackie, we are good.
Okay. Okay, now we will go with the port based routing. Okay, so now what happens, like I want to show you some kind of listener. So as I mentioned, like when I create basically a replicas, it create a 2 listener on port 80 and 443 minikube service list minus n gateway. Don't worry about this. So here you can see port 80 and port 443 basically, right? So 2 listener, but I want to create, like I want to enable one more listener, which is port 8081. So for that I have to update a service ingress file, right? So for updating service ingress file, you have this particular command kubectl namespace gateway edit svc ingress file. So let me do that.
But Jitendra, why we want to expose an internal port to an external consumer?
No,
So
I'm not.
this would make it
No. See, I'm not going to. This is not. So this is the internal port only. On the
okay.
top of that, there will be some kind of load balancer, right? So like,
Okay.
so we will not going to expose this port. This is for internal routing. So
So
right now, I
probably
do.
you you
Yeah,
would want to use Nginx or something to
yeah,
reverse
if you
the
require
back
some
onto
kind of
this port.
yeah, you require
Oh,
some kind of application load balancer or something. This is the
oh,
ingress load balancer, which is internal, right? On the
thank you.
top of that, we will going to have some application load balancer or Nginx load balancer, where
Yeah,
we can define the routing basically. Okay.
sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Here, see, you can see this is the port, and here you can see, right? I will copy this in my service ingress file. I'll just enter. I don't want to give a node port, it will generate automatically for you. I don't have to give a target port. I will just say 8081, and I will just say employee API. It is updated. Now, if I execute this particular command, service list minus gateway, you will see the third port, no listener for the third port, right? You can see it, right? Now, what I will do, I want to publish the employee API. So, what is my employee API? So, localhost 900 API employee, right? This is my employee API. Instead of localhost, I will going to use the IP address. So generally, when there's an internal communication happen between the Docker container, it required IP. So I will use my system IP, which is 172.260.32.1. Copy. Okay, I got the same response, and I will just copy. I will not going to copy the resource path. I will just copy, this particular path. 172.226.32.1, right? So just copy this line, this thing. Now what I have to do, here you can go to your Flex Gateway. Here you can see the Flex Gateway is in connected mode. Click on that. Go to APIs, and you can say Add API. Okay. Now what you can see here, you have three runtime: Flex Gateway, Mule Gateway, and Service Mesh. I will select Flex Gateway, and here it will list down all the active Flex Gateway. I will just select this one. Say next. Right. I will say create new API, and I will give some like demo employee API. And here either you can use like REST API. If you are using the REST API, you have to provide the RAML, but I will use HTTP API. So it's just a request forwarding, like so I'm using HTTP API. Next. Okay. 8081, I have to provide the implementation URI. So this is my implementation URI. I haven't provided the resource path. I don't have to provide it. And port 8081. Okay. I will say next, save and deploy. It's deployed. It's very quick. It's got deployed. You can see it's active. Right now, I want to access it. So right now, what happens, like if I want to access this particular thing, right? So I have to provide a tunnel URL basically, right? Because we don't have a load balancer. Now I want to access it publicly, right? So for that, I can generate the tunnel URL in the Kubernetes. For generating the tunnel URL, you can pass this command: service ingress minus n gateway. Go enter. It will start. It will generate. So here you are 8081 on the third number, right? So this is my tunnel URL for 8081. Copy. Okay. Now I will pass API employees. I got the response from the Flex Gateway, right? Now let me apply the policies. I will use the basic authentication policy. Admin, admin. Okay. Let's see, it got applied. Let me copy this. I have to close it because it get cached. Yeah, it got cached. So let me open the other browser. Still, policy is not applied. Let's wait. It doesn't take that much of the time. It happens in the seconds. Let me check whether policy is applied to right API or not. Yeah, it's right. No, I'm using the wrong URL. I have to use that. I have to use 127.63. Yeah, I was using the wrong URL. I was directly using the internal URL. Okay, so I will take this URL, copy. Let's APS less employees. Yeah, it will ask me for the username and the password. Okay. I, I've done that. So this is known as a port-based routing. Now I want to expose my other API, right? That is order API. I cannot do on 8081. Let's see. If I go there, there's another way you can add new API. You can select the Flex Gateway. Your Flex Gateway next. Create new API. Enter the asset name demo order API. I can say HTTP API. Next. Okay, so let me copy the URL ipconfig. Copy this HTTP. We'll say 9002 for order, right? It's 9002. We can verify it. Yeah, it's 9002. Then let's see if it does. See, it's giving port 8081 is already done, right? If I deployed on 8082, it will deploy, but it will not work because there is a no listener for that. For creating the listener, I have to go to service ingress file again. I will edit this. And I will go here. And I will add two ports. One is for order API. I will remove this node port. It will generate it automatically. I will remove the target port. It will automatically generate it. And I will give a health API. And this is, and I want to change this to 883, 882. Save it. Right. I will just check minikube service ingress -n gateway. Here you can see you have a path for order API also, 8082 also. Now you can see the 5 path and 5 tunnel URLs, right? So let's start. Let me go back to my Anypoint platform. Here, if I say 8082, it should work. Next, save and deploy. Now I will publish my third API. I will select the Flex Gateway. Next, create new API. I will say demo help API. Select type HTTP API. Next, right? I let me copy the IP address again. I think help API is running on 9003. Let me just verify it. Yes. Okay. Here I will say HTTP. No need to do that. And I will say 8083. Next, save and deploy. Go to policy, apply, basic, auth, admin, admin. I think I haven't applied the policy to order API. Okay, I think for health API, I have ties like I type the password in the capital letter. Let me make it small, otherwise I will keep on getting errors. So now all three APIs has been published. One is on 8081, other is on 8082, and third is on 8083. So here we are like achieving a port-based routing, right? Let me Control C, CLS, then this command. So let's start taking one URL at a time. So this is my URL for port 8081. So you will not have a multiple URL in the real scenarios. So don't worry about that. It will be a separate URL. So admin. So I got the response. Let me take a second URL. So here, whenever you set the nginx load balancer, right, where you can define the rule and you will be having the single URL. So I have one video on that. I already published the video on that. You can see that, like, okay, order admin. Then let me go back to third URL. I can say help admin admin. Okay. So this is what we have seen port-based routing. Now I want to see the path-based routing. So in path-based routing, I will be having the single port but multiple paths, right? So I will have to deploy all the API on the single port, and I will be having a different paths basically. We will going to add a path also. So now it's health, right? So I will add some extra path here, health API. Okay. But right now I will try to it will not work, right? Route not found. So what we will do, the first thing, let me remove all the ports from the service file. I don't require this many of ports. We'll quickly remove this. I will keep only one port, 8081 and 8443. That's fine. That is by default. Now if I run this command minikube service list minus n gateway, here you have now three parts only, right? So now what I will going to do, I will go back to my anypoint platform. First, I will go to order API. So see, you don't have to do anything on a Flex gateway. You can do everything from here. Go to this. You just have to add a base path. I will say employee API. This base path must be unique across all the API deployed in your Flex gateway. Save and deploy. Right. So we have done with employee API. Now same thing we will do with the order API. So let's see. We can do one thing here. I want to show one demo. I'm saying 8081 and save and deploy. It should give me the error, right? Because 8081, like our API already exists, right? So if I give some unique path, it will, the error will go away. The next thing, I'll go to health API. Now I will give health API. I will change the port to 8081. Save and apply. Right? Now I will just say CLS minikube service ingress and gateway. Okay, now this is the single URL we are going to use for all the APIs. So let me first start with, I have to pass employee API. Only the difference, we have to add the extra path slash API slash employee. Okay. Now I will say order API. Now let me pass orders here. What happens? It should say no route found, no listener, because for order we have a order API. Right? Now same thing, I can go with the health API. We got, right? So that is what, port based routing and the path based routing. So like you can have a multiple ports for like each API to route the request, and you can have a unique base path to route the request to the right API, right? Now, other thing I want to showcase, just 2 more minutes. So I want to showcase something related to monitoring. So you click select any one of the API, and it automatically, like, you don't have to enable anything. Like, it automatically started generating the metrics for you. So here you can see it starts generating the metrics for you so quick. Like, it give a 4 metrics: total request over time, total policy violation, average response time over time, total errors over time. Now let me go to the anypoint monitoring. Okay, you can go to built-in dashboard and you can select your demo hyphen the demo employee API, select the instance, just save view. So it automatically start logging into your monitoring also. I haven't done anything, right? So that is the advantage of setting up the Flex Gateway in the connected mode. You can see, like, such kind of logging here. Basically, like, you can see number of the request, volume, like a field request, total 400, 500 error, average response time, those kind of, yeah, some kind of, like, charts you can see. Even you can create some custom dashboard, right? Depending on your requirement, functional monitoring, alerts, whatever you want to, you can do that. Yeah. So I think I have done with my session. Does anyone have any question or anything, like, Can you hear me?
Yes, Jackie, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think I have done with my session.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have any question, you can just ask me. I will try to answer the question. I think Sudhir is only active.
Yeah, I don't want to just to take over everything and ask the questions. So.
Yeah, I know this is very bit complex topic. I try to make it easy, but yeah, there are some, like, you should have some background on the Kubernetes and Docker to understand this topic. But yeah, like, if you have that particular knowledge, then it's easy for you. Otherwise, yeah, it's a bit complex topic.
We have a question, Jackie.
How, like, Naveen, like, how Flex Gateway can replace the API manager? I think Flex Gateway is the part of your API manager, right? So it will not going to replace API manager. It's a part of your API manager. See, gateway and API management. API manager is a capability, and gateway is the component of that API manager, right? Is this answer your question, Naveen? Okay. So even, like, if you see whatever we have done, right, for Flex, we have done everything from API manager only, right? We have, like, published the API, like, we have set up the policies, we have seen the metrics, right? We have seen everything in the API manager. So what I'm saying, API management is the capability for managing your API, and gateway is the one component of your API management manager capability. Okay. Yeah. So any question? If no, so Nitish, like, what next?
Yeah, we have a quiz.
Then you can start with the quiz.
Okay,
I
sure.
will go on mute. I will stop sharing and go on mute. I will stop recording also.
Yeah, sure.